I'm not one to shy away from a massive, complex project in this game. In fact, I usually over-engineer things just for the fun of it. But this particular build really put me to the test. It required a web of difficult infrastructure, high-capacity roads, brand new tram lines, a new train station, modern developments, and much more. If you're ready for a journey of trial and error, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and let's dive in. So we're finally building a big, beautiful football stadium here in Zeeburg, something that has been requested about 500 times, I think. And it's gonna tie into a big, modern financial district, as well as a ton of affordable public housing, transit options, and super complex roadways, so it's just gonna be a ton of fun. Now, with the stadium being one of the bigger assets we're ever gonna place in the city, I should probably place it first, and I think the location here just north of Ferdinand and northeast of the central yards of Zeeburg is perfect. For one, this location will offer plenty of mass transit expansions. We've obviously got plenty of rail infrastructure right next door. We've got the tram tracks abruptly ending here in the northern part of Ferdinand, with the Ferdinand station currently being the terminal, but we can change that. And then we've got a pretty large arterial outlining the northern boundaries of Ferdinand, and this guy feeds almost directly into the heart of the city, Hoch Park, as well as some of the western suburbs. And I also just think this location makes sense from a narrative perspective. This is a massive build. This is something that is pretty hard to fit into older parts of the city. And there's going to be a bit of real-life inspiration for the location as well. Modern stadiums being built on the outskirts of town in redeveloped areas is a very common theme around the globe, but just utilizing one example here from Amsterdam, the distance between this modern stadium district and the old town is pretty significant. But we've got all the good things in place here. We've got lots of heavy rail infrastructure, allowing for a dedicated station. This is also a pretty dense residential district and financial center as well. We've also got a major highway feeding easy traffic to and from the district. And I think it's pretty easy to see that the majority of the architecture here is maybe 50 years old at max, and most of it is probably quite a few decades younger. So it's a very, very modern district compared to the old town. Lots of wide roads and, funnily enough, lots of car infrastructure here, but obviously also the mass transit options. To make room for the football stadium as well as a potential train station, we're going to relocate the athletic wear factory again. Yeah, it's not the height of realism, as I'm throwing this guy around a couple of times by now, but it's just gonna have to move over for some new developments, I guess. We're also gonna have to remove this rural road, which is a bit of a shame because it's actually seeing quite a bit of use, but we'll get something much more substantial. The stadium we're gonna use is the iconic Allianz Arena, the current home of FC Bayern Munich, and it's a really nice asset. It's also really massive, so we might change the placement throughout some of the changes we make in the episode here, but I just want to get it placed because I'll need an overall idea of the scale and where other things are gonna sit in relation to it. We're just gonna scoop it a bit further away from the train tracks because we'll need space for a potential train station. We're gonna need some high rises as well to really complete this modern look. And we're also gonna need to branch off from these arterials, which is probably the next step we're gonna take. We might as well have a quick look at the actual real-life location of this wonderful stadium, and just like in Amsterdam's case, it is located on the very, very far outskirts of the city near some pretty significant infrastructure. In fact, it kind of borders a massive interchange, but there's some train or perhaps metro/U-Bahn infrastructure here in place. You've got a station in pretty close proximity to the stadium, I would say walking distance if you're just decently fit, and there's a bit of a park space here in front, which may be actual parking as well. It's a pretty interesting setup. There's not a lot of direct inspiration to really take here because the area in Zeeburg is just gonna look wildly different and the road layout is gonna look very different as well. A quick change of plans on the priority list. Instead of branching out the road layouts that will serve this area, I think we're gonna start with some terrain-related infrastructure because that is just less flexible and more immobile. So let's get rid of this weird little alley here and start working on an actual station. We're gonna try something fun here because I really want to utilize this elevated train station, but I don't want it to be strictly elevated, if that makes sense. There is a lot of elevation changes here, tracks moving underneath, roads moving underneath, double stacking right here. So if I can grab this asset and maybe just kind of lower it, I am going to lower the stadium a little bit as well to just be at the same height. So we're gonna play with the terrain just a little bit to make this area more interesting. We're also just gonna get rid of this track segment here so that we can move this one a bit further inwards here and just have the outermost track of the station be this selection here. Otherwise, it's gonna get a little weird as we try to connect everything up. It's gonna be a bit of a tricky process, but I'm hopeful that if I add some careful nodes with node controller, I am able to somewhat control the height of this. Obviously, I don't want it to be fully elevated, so it's gonna be something like this, which is already super odd. I'm hopeful this is gonna turn out all right in the end, but I may need the station to like actually be elevated. At least a quick segment so that we can maybe have a road underneath. There's just so much infrastructure here. I don't see how that is gonna pan out. And we've got all these nodes as well, so let's see if we can beautifully, carefully slope our way out of this. But it's gonna take a little while. So 4.5 is, let's go just one step further. We can get down to 2.8, which is just fine. We're gonna try to do the very same thing for the track leaving the station here. 3.7, can we move to 2.4? Yes. This is just turning into a proper mess because I think the elevation changes we did with network tools were a good fit because the incline here was just a little too steep. I just never considered that because it's kind of out of focus, I guess. But it obviously means that the transition to the rail yard, which is at a much lower height, is now completely out of whack. So I think this is an invitation by Cities Skylines 2 to me to make things more complex. And as you guys know, I'm never gonna decline that invitation. Well, that was definitely a bit of a change with plenty of new railway tracks in place. In fact, the entire station district is pretty much surrounded by railway tracks. Some modern, some passenger focused, and some which I think are pretty old and probably freight focused, although not currently seeing any active use. So I do imagine that maybe there used to sit like a bit of industry or a large manufacturing plant out here. Something that wasn't really something that the city or the citizens wanted to preserve, explaining why there is a pretty modern, sizable district out here now. It's kind of the same with Ferdinand. It started as more dirty industry. It has since mostly transformed into a bit of a high-tech knowledge hub, but you still have some of the remnants of the old industry here. Something else to continue from Ferdinand will be the expansion of a couple of branches of the Zeeburg tram network, specifically the ZTN1 and the Setien 1 Express branch. They currently treat the tram junction station here in Ferdinand as the final stop before reversing back into town. And I'm not quite sure whether we'll bring both of these lines into the stadium districts. That kind of depends on just how much development we plan to get done out here. Anyways, the first step is obviously bringing some actual tram tracks to the stadium district. And this one has been a little tricky to plan because I might just go for a classic tram train transfer, and I don't want to say that too much. So maybe TTT is going to be the shortening, because we could enable TTT right here at the elevated train station quite easily. And it's become a bit of a theme here in Zeeburg that the transit planners of City Hall have enabled these tram train transfers throughout the city. We've got one in Monterey with the tram station right next to the train station. We've pretty much got the same on the border of Ferdinand and Wilhelmsburg. We've got a very busy commuter train station right below a tram station. Not right below, but there's a very easy connective pedestrian overpass here, so it's technically connected. We've got the same thing going on if we move into downtown in Antoinette. We've got this tram plaza here right next to the elevated station. And we've just got this route. I think we even have the same configuration in Western. We've got the even the new tram station located here in the central plaza is technically right next to the station. But then to make things interesting, the two different types of tracked infrastructure kind of splits here in Western, with the tram moving closer to the coastline, serving more, small local stops right here in the heart of Belmont as well. While obviously there's a bit of a distance from the big Belmont station to this tram stop. Anyways, a bit of a detour, but I mean, that is the perk of having built a large city. You actually have references you can draw on when you need a bit of inspiration. Yeah, let's go for another case of tram train transferring. And then I'll just make sure that this is not the final stop of this tram line. We are going to make a right turn, I think, and at least have one additional stop here, which would prompt me to build something pretty dense here, but that is already a plan in the works, so that's gonna happen either way. Anyways, we need an appropriate stop right in front of the station, so I think I'm gonna grab this 5-meter median tram, 29-meter 2+1 road. That is some beautiful naming. I really thought of that one, huh? I'm just gonna get a straight segment in place right in front of the station, enable upgrades just to kind of flip it, junk. And it's already looking so nice and modern, especially when we've got these amazing ice 4 trains just kind of cutting through this urban environment here. Anyways, I think we're gonna break up this design with a slightly more slim version, perhaps just the version we've used here in Ferdinand, because I don't want a ton of traffic volume to necessarily go right next to the station. I'm gonna feed that on the other side of the stadium. That's the plan for now, at least. We'll need the overpass crossing the freight tracks. Yeah, there's some elevation weirdness here I'm gonna have to fix, but we've got network tools, so that is just a walk in the park, fortunately. Let's get this connected up. We'll grab network tools, and if I'm lucky, I can just make this segment. Wow, that is steep. 5, almost 6%. Well, it's all right, but it is very steep. Then I'm just gonna make sure we've got enough clearance for potential freight tracks running underneath this overpass here. And once again, utilize network tools just to kind of smoothen out this long segment here. So 2.9, that is fine. Another critical piece of infrastructure that is going to play a key role in the aesthetics of this build, but also just the functionality in terms of getting people to and from this place, is going to be the highway segment. So my initial hunch is to just kind of, maybe just change this connection a little bit by grabbing this highway segment and moving next to the stadium. Maybe having some sort of connectivity here. I mean, this is a highway, a major arterial as well. that could work. I am being very spontaneous here, if you haven't guessed so far, which can work out really well and not so well. We'll see. So we're moving underneath the train tracks, but above the other highway here. And I did try to kind of follow the contours of the stadium. Can you say contours of the stadium? Somewhat with this bend here. And it's something I think I'm going to just lean more into by having like an additional road follow the outline of the texture used here. This pretty simple texture. We've got these lamp props to go by instead. So we're just gonna use the continuous tool and do this as nice as possible to seamlessly connect here. Obviously the lane math here is a little out of whack, so I may upgrade this to a 3+2. But I think more importantly, I just want to get this connection in place first. I think I've already mentioned the amount of elevation change in this area, but it's also what is effectively enabling all of these over and underpasses. It is also enabling some real fun complexity, I think, because we've also got a steady incline here so that we can actually make it across these freight tracks. But that is also an opportunity for us to have yet another overpass. Because if we just grab the terrain tooling here and we make sure to kind of smoothen things out around the stadium a little bit, which I think makes a lot of sense, we can bring a road underneath this road. Because of course we can. And then we're gonna follow the, I want to say, control line again of the stadium on this side. Which is gonna be a fun bit of symmetry, I think. Because we also follow that side on the other side of the stadium, and we can even get this connection in place so that we can bring this all the way around. Now these are just some placeholder vanilla highway roads. We might not want to use these in the end because I probably want some sidewalks to serve the stadium, but for now they're doing a pretty fine job at just kind of fleshing out the big like the big steps of the road layout here, just making sure this is aligned to the correct height. My philosophy here is just to make sure the station feels well integrated to its surroundings and the infrastructure, because it's a really big, very special shape. So I think it makes sense that a lot of the surrounding infrastructure has been built to accommodate the stadium, because obviously this is like the dominating focal point here. And I think so far we've achieved this. I think employing like a really curvy, swoopy road layout and not utilizing a slightly boring grid is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. We are also going to bring the tram road that is going to serve the outermost portions of the stadium district across the highway. This segment here is looking a little wonky, so I'm just gonna check if we've actually got some decent nodes in place here already. So let's see if we can do something even more fun. Grabbing the 4-lane version here, upgrading outwards, then grabbing the 2-lane versions, and just seeing if we can have another fun ramp connecting to this segment right here. And as we move in here, we're going to grab this and connect it to the node we already have right here, transitioning between the two different tram segments. Then what we can do is we can downgrade this just like this. I feel like we've got a pretty decent starting setup in place, and the stadium seems to be pretty well framed by the surrounding infrastructure, but it's all just a little empty, a little barren, and it's very hard to just conceptualize how this is gonna look and how the scale is gonna feel before we've added any buildings. So I think we're gonna jump into a bit of an experimentational phase, just continuing to chip away at the infrastructure, but also getting the very first assets placed here, just to like get a sense of scale. I don't want the stadium to look cartoonishly big. Yeah. Let's try out a few things. Yeah, so a couple of buildings quickly turned into 50, but I was having a lot of fun experimenting with different types of assets, removing stuff, adding stuff, trying to create a streamlined mall design by the combination of 3 malls. Yeah, I mean, streamlined is probably not the correct word for this abomination, but it does look kind of interesting, at least from afar. It's obviously lacking a ton of detailing, but after a few hours of working on this and just trying things out, I was getting worried that the time-lapse would get too long. Which is kind of funny because after a bit of editing, it's like 2.5 minutes or maybe even less, but that is such a frequent occurrence that I think things are spiraling out of control, and in reality, after some editing, it's, yeah, it ain't much, but it's honest work. Anyways, let's have a look at the actual demographics for what is currently called the Stadium District, so I guess it goes without saying that I need a bit of a naming suggestion. The cool thing here is that we're approaching 7,000 residents, and there's also 3,000 jobs out here. The really cool thing though is that this district has actually taken us beyond the 100k mark, which I feel is a massive milestone for Zeeburg, so that's really cool and slightly unexpected. But there is a lot of high density living here, so I guess it makes sense. And it also makes sense to get some rapid transit out here now that it is so dense, because I'm expecting some decent ridership. Let's start with that. Ooh, that is bad. Yikes, why is that so busy now? That's a new thing. This avenue usually isn't this busy. We'll have to look at that later. Yeah, just postponing the issues. The ZTN1 Express line, we're gonna bring that all the way out to the station. I can only add a waypoint because I need to add a few stops as well. 1 and a 2, and we'll add the final stop down here. Alright, let's see, I should be able to grab the waypoint and get that added, and it can reverse like this. Perfect. And then the other line, the ZTN1, I'm thinking of bringing that all the way out to this station here. Everything's all connected up now, and I should have the first person mod finally reinstalled again. So let's just lower the speed here a little bit and take a ride on this tram. Oh, Wilhelmspark Depot, that is nice. Yeah, I'm not sure I should have a full crossing here. In fact, I'm sure I shouldn't, so I'm gonna get that fixed. So we did locate an issue here. Let's get the traffic signaling away, and we're just gonna keep one of these crossings. It doesn't really seem like the tram extension needs much more tweaking than that though. Most of the inclines are super smooth due to the help of network tools, and we've already got people queuing up here at the final stop. A couple of people waiting for the green lights, so I'm gonna be curious to see if they'll actually make it. Come on. No. I think I should bring the stop maybe a bit to this side though, because it did look like the tram just kind of encroached a bit on the crossing, which is completely unnecessary. So yeah, let's just make sure it makes it stop here, which should be more than fine. Of course, we might as well just tag along for a ride just to ensure that everything is looking nice and smooth. I haven't set up any of these traffic lights to have priority for trams though. I might do that later, but I'm not expecting a ton of traffic, so I think it should work all right. There's a bit of a weird bump though as we're coming across this intersection, as you can probably tell. So yeah, I'm gonna do just a little bit of tweaking to get that sorted, but otherwise it's looking fairly smooth. And I know the field of view is a little weird from this angle, but the city just looks so massive with the sprawling skyscrapers in the background. We saw bits of the financial district at Hock Park on our right side, and then we've got the high-tech district of Ferdinand there in the background. And we can just about make out one of the yellow, very distinctive residential towers of Wilhelmspark as well. Oh, and there's a ton of people waiting for the tram right here. That's pretty cool. We're now on the main intersection between the Stadium District and Ferdinand, and this is still a traffic mess. I'm surprised how cleanly we got through this, because it's looking pretty bad. I'll need to look into why it's so bad. I have rerouted some of the outside traffic, so it's probably me who's messed something up, which is so usually the case. So we're now carrying 139 passengers as we're going to cross the bridge over the highway as well as the commuter rail line running down below, and we're now crossing from Ferdinand into Wilhelmspark. Nice beard. Alright, so it seems like the tram situation here in the Stadium District is looking pretty good. Most of the inclines and curves feel pretty realistic, and we are seeing some pretty decent ridership figures, although a tram just disappeared. Not sure what happened there. Anyways, lots of people are waiting here, so it's all pretty good. But what about our train station? We still need to set up a commuter line, and I do expect this to be a pretty busy line, because we're going to have a direct connection to the heart of the city. But before we do that, I'm going to just look at some of the feedback I got from the previous episode, where we had a bit of a headache going on with the Weststrand train station. So the main issue here, just to quickly recap, is that 3 commuter lines make their way all the way up here to the Belmont station, which I think is fine. It's a pretty sizable station, and Belmont turned out to be a pretty sizable suburb. It's almost a mini-city in its own right. The issue though is that Westland Station is just a 2-track, 2-platform station, and currently all of the commuter lines stop here, and it is causing a bit of a mess because obviously it's not going to show right when I record, but there's lots of queues here, lots of train traffic where trains have to wait for sometimes up to a minute to actually be able to enter the station. And most of you wanted to actually keep the Westland station in place, but just make sure that not all of the commuter lines make an actual stop here, which I think is a pretty good idea. And a couple of you mentioned that specifically the C1 line probably shouldn't make a stop here because it only has 2 other stops, and that is at the historical Central Station and the big elevated station in Antoinette. So it's already an express line of sorts. Although I'm not sure I can actually grab the C1 and revert it, or will I have to pause and just remove all the stops in hopes of being able to find the specific line I want and route that outside of the station. Yeah, it's probably... Oh, there's a C1 node right here. That's nice. So if I can just isolate this guy... Well, that was easy. I will also have to just switch the platform that the C1 is using at Belmont Station to this one. And can I... Yeah, we can do something like this. Does it work all right with the in one? It does, but maybe we should just utilize these tracks just for a bit of additional clearance. Let's see if this is all working all right. So the N1 and the E2 are still making their stops here. And what is going on right here? I've got a wonky node that is forcing the C1 to make a weird decision, which I just gotta find. Not a node, I mean a waypoint. Oh, this is getting so tricky. Yeah, I think that sort of solved it. So I can grab the... Whoops. I can grab the C1 line here and just assign that to the outermost track. Or I guess innermost from our angle. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'll remove this waypoint and see if I can just grab them and move them in here. All right, so we're seeing plenty of views of all tracks, which is nice. Where is the C1 stopping? So the C1 has a very central stop at the the historic station, it's probably better to maybe switch these around. So the C1 utilizes this stop in this direction. I'll need to be careful with this waypoint. And it utilizes this stop in the other direction. And this really highlights the danger of relying on these waypoints to map out the train routes. But I kind of have to, because the network is so complex. I've got so many tracks at play at the same time that I kind of have to rely on waypoints to just kind of spread out the trains across multiple tracks. Because otherwise they're pretty much just gonna try and default to some of the very same tracks, which is obviously not gonna work out all that well. Because then they'll be just queuing up. I am now trying to reassign the N1 line to use the platforms that the C1 line used beforehand, which is causing a lot of issues due to waypoints. And I'm gonna see if I can grab it from here. There it is, N1, move that over here. Get the C line reattached to this stop, or get the stop actually added, come on. And the N1 is now a complete mess due to waypoints. Hopefully it's a quick fix by just locating them and getting them removed. Yeah, that really that helped quite a bit. Oh wait, we've got another rogue waypoint, yank. Okay, now it's all starting to, can I move this one down here? And this one down. Yeah, let's do something like that. So a final sanity check throughout the network. But yeah, it's gonna be very obvious very quickly if I've messed something up, because the trains are gonna act really, really weird. This change alone won't clear up the queues here at Western Station. So what I've also done is I have removed one vehicle from the E2 and N1 line respectively. So I think both of them are going to sit at around 3 vehicles now, because unfortunately I just can't justify having many more than that, because the trains are almost empty. I know realistically I should cut down service even more, but I mean, we do appreciate watching trains throughout the city, so yeah. But I guess this does provide the train yards of Zeeburg with a bit of spare capacity, which is nice because we're adding an all-new line. And I really haven't settled with myself, I guess, on how to build this. So I'm just gonna add a single stop at the new station. Then we're going to utilize the empty single track platform here at the central station. And then I'm thinking, just for the fun of it, moving all the way up here to Belmont and utilizing one of these platforms, probably this one, because I need to be able to stay on this track so I avoid Western Station. Then we're gonna move all the way back, and we're gonna utilize the same platform but in the opposite direction, which means that we're probably only going to have one train on this line. Oh, what is going? I'm not sure what's going on here, but we'll get that fixed. I'm gonna try to complete the line. More issues, more problems. I don't have a proper way of connecting this track segment to this innermost one, which I'll need to make the right turn here and go to the historic central station. Of course I don't. Can I do something here that looks sort of smooth and not too janky? Come on. Is that smooth? I mean, it's decently smooth. Maybe just a little bit of manipulation mode can make it even more. I mean, that is actually pretty smooth, I'd say. Pretty good. Just bring this back a little bit. Yeah, now we're talking. Did it automatically change? It did in one direction, but not the other. So can I find this? Come on. Yeah, this is why I don't stream, by the way. Oh, I managed to grab it somehow. Let's get a waypoint right here. This feels very unnecessary, but this feels about right. Cool. We will of course make sure to use the trusty BR stock that we use throughout all the commuter rail here in Zeeburg. Let's grab a 423. Oh yes, very adventurous. Get this one deselected. The name though, I mean technically this would be North 3 because we've already got 2 North 1. It's a mess. I think I've got an idea for the naming though based on one of your suggestions. Anyways, let's get this one up and running. So we're gonna drop the ticket price and make sure we just get one vehicle. It does actually have a pretty nice yellow color scheme, but yeah, obviously we're just gonna make sure that it's colorized with the wonderful blue teal thingy we've been utilizing so far. Oh, maybe it's time for another quick first-person ride segment. So let's just drop the simulation speed to half, because that just feels a little more realistic. And have a closer look. Oh, hello. It's not making any sounds for whatever reason. Oh, yikes. Yeah, this is when you're using retaining walls up close. You'll get some weird shenanigans going on, but why are we are reversing now? Okay, so I assume it's going to serve one of the other stops on this line before actually going to the stadium district. So let's just switch to the opposite vehicle. Opposite vehicle, yeah. I'm great with the train lingo. You know what I mean. Let's move into town. And a little disclaimer here, I haven't used network tools around these old bits of tracks yet, which is probably very visible if we approach some very bumpy spots here. So yeah. Oh, we've got some floating bushes in the air as well. That's very nice. We've got some trees on the tracks as well. Yeah, I mean, I should probably clean some of this stuff up. But it is very nice finally seeing this single dual direction track actually being in use now. And we've actually got a few people waiting to take this train as well. That's nice. Oh, look at the station name. Asset name, train track. Anyways, let's kick back, have a cup of coffee, and take the train all the way to Belmont. Oh, yikes. Yeah, that was a bit of a weird switch. So obviously, I've got a few more waypoints to place. Wonderful. So the N3 line carried a total of 0 passengers from the historical train station to Belmont. So maybe it shouldn't make a stop here after all. 10 people did board though, so I guess that's something. And the final quick fix is just going to be making sure that it doesn't make this weird switch across 2 or 3 sets of tracks, completely unnecessary. Now the entry line should be perfectly configured. Alright, getting back to the stadium district, more specifically the actual stadium, where we've got some major shortcomings that we definitely need to address before we can do any type of detailing. Because while the stadium is technically functional by being connected to a road and receiving power and water and sewage, can you imagine actually visiting it on a match day? I don't even see a single pedestrian crossing allowing you to enter it. So you'd have to kind of jaywalk across 4 tracks of pretty high-speed traffic. So I am going to attempt something without removing any of these beautiful roads, because I do really enjoy this configuration. I do enjoy the stadium being the centerpiece of a large, complex bit of road infrastructure. So yeah, it's gonna require a bit of experimentation. So here's the plan. We're going to raise the entire stadium sitting on its platform, and then we'll have an outer layer of small pedestrian streets allowing for direct access, as well as like match day activities, I guess, and some overpasses as well, so you can safely enter the stadium without having to cross all these lanes of traffic. So I have no idea if this is gonna work, but we're gonna start by just creating like a ring road of these pedestrian streets, kind of following the contours of the road here. I'm gonna have to use Move It extensively to make sure we've got enough space. So this is really just making sure I have plenty of nodes in play to actually, plenty of nodes in place to actually play with. So now that we've got this loop surrounding the stadium complete, we're going to carefully move through each node and just bring that closer to the road. In fact, we're probably going to overlap the road ever so slightly, because this little runoff area, this road shoulder, is not really intended to be used for anything. So let's just encroach a little bit on that to create a more tight look. Obviously, I'm gonna have to do a bit of segment tweaking with Move It as well, just so we make sure that the curvatures here are nice and smooth. I've got all the nodes decently adjusted now, and I've just selected all of them, including the stadium. Then I'm going to Control H to the height of the stadium, so all the nodes are aligned. And then we're gonna raise this bad boy. I don't know by how much, but enough clearance that we can have some pedestrian overpasses at the very least. This is gonna be fun. I think we need something like this height at the very least. Now we're going to add, are we gonna add a quayside? I mean, we could, but then the actual base texture that was created here is also pretty interesting. I'm just gonna upgrade a few keys. Yeah, I mean, that is probably better. I actually think this looks pretty cool on first go. It's very complex, but the terrain here is tough to work with. The asset is tough to work with, so things are just tricky, but it's also the type of project that is just going to turn out real nice when actually finalized. There is a bit of a different shape here, though, where I don't quite follow the shape of the stadium. And I think my idea here was to have like a underground parking entrance of some sort here. But the first thing I want to do is see if I can connect the pedestrian ring road here directly to our train station. So let's see, we're gonna try something out here. I think this is about the center of the stadium. I don't have to be precise, because obviously I didn't align the train station perfectly with the stadium. Some sense of symmetry wouldn't be too bad, so let's just get a little overpass going. We're actually gonna move that all the way over to the road here. Then we're gonna branch off with a small pedestrian street, which we're going to attach on one side, this side here. And we're gonna try to bring that directly into the train station at a 5-meter elevation, something like this. Then obviously we'll have to move down to ground level, and then this connection might just be a little, is that a little too much? Maybe I should do something else. Can I add, I'm gonna see if I can just add a roundabout here, just like this, and then do a direct connection with a pedestrian path or 2. So if I have a connection like this, and I'll just have one move in front of the station to about here and do another connection. It's almost a bit of detailing by this point. I'll have this connection, maybe just bring this pedestrian path all the way down to the first of the 3 high rises here. I obviously just need to move this up a little bit so that we steer somewhat clear. That should be fine. That should be just fine. And then the reason I have this weird split here in this pedestrian overpass is that my idea was that I could branch off a straight segment which is going to move down here. So a staircase basically. Can I get the 90 degrees? There we go, and connect directly to this node. Then I think for good measure I'll get this downgraded to a single lane segment. Let's attempt to build some actual underground parking, because I don't expect everyone to reach the stadium by foot or by public transit. Some people are just gonna drive here and they'll need places to park. So I think the first easy connection we can make is just to ensure that you can actually reach the stadium from this parking garage here on the other side of the road. So let's just see if we can get a cheeky overpass going here that leads directly into the parking garage. Might even be able to make it like an actual connection point to this road here. Yunk. And while this was a pretty messy, chaotic way of doing it, just kind of ramming it through the parking garage here, I would not be surprised if it actually works. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's gonna work, because Cities Skylines 2 pathing is just incredibly flexible to work with. So yeah, it's probably definitely gonna work. I don't know how many people we're gonna see utilize it, but that is one down. There's a couple more to go. Specifically this corner here, where, as mentioned, I want to see if I can get like an underground parking garage going underneath the stadium. Now, unfortunately, this avenue here actually rises in height before it reaches this roundabout, so I don't know if we have enough clearance to get like a realistic gradient going on the road that is gonna lead. We might just be able to pull this off. Let's just start with, can I start with an alley? And then we're gonna lower this into the ground. 17%, that is way too much. But we can definitely do 9%. Then I'm gonna grab one of these small underground parking lots and try to add that somewhere over here. We'll see if we can just key off, not retaining wall, key off this segment. That is really not too bad, and people are actually utilizing it. I don't know if it gives them direct access to the stadium though, if there's like a bit of pathing between the pedestrian road here and the parking lot. But then, realistically, we don't have match days in this game, unfortunately. So there's never gonna be like one specific time frame of increased rush hour to this place. It is just like, it's just a tourist attraction basically. So I think this is fine. We just need a few additional ones. I'm not sure from a traffic management perspective that you'd have 2 crossings this close to each other feeding car traffic to and from a stadium like this. But we've now got 3 different entrances, including this dedicated parking garage. And once again, it is a stadium in a fairly, it's not an inner city stadium, but it's not fully suburban either. So I wouldn't expect us having to provide potential parking for every single spectator. That's just not gonna happen. We can realistically assume that a lot of people will utilize public transit to reach this stadium. I've got this weird feeling that this was kind of the easy way out in terms of the parking. I usually like to make things complex, so this was just a little too quick. We're gonna try something. I have no idea if this is actually gonna work, but I'm gonna try to see if we can get some actual parking moving above the ring road here. So I've got this narrow 2-lane parking road, which I created with Road Builder. It's just a quick configuration of one of the existing parking lot roads from the vanilla game. I just made this a little more narrow in hopes of better accommodating the scale of this place. Let's just try things out. Let's say 7.5, something like that. We'll try to just follow the curvature. I just want to make sure the segment is long enough. And we're just going to place it quickly because it's going to require a lot of movement to get this to work. I'm going to align it to the height of the pedestrian ring road here around the stadium, which is seeing quite a bit of use, which is a lot of fun. All right, we've got that settled. Now we just need to move it on top of this road. The clearance for the supporting pillars isn't perfect. It doesn't collide with any of the vehicles down below, but I mean, I guess it's a little dangerous for this bit to stick in a little. But then again, you really shouldn't be driving there, so maybe it's just your fault if you collide with it. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Anyways, we're gonna try to get the alignment correct here on all the nodes, so this seems like the right way to do it. And then for this final bit here, I was thinking of making a direct connection to the pedestrian overpass here leading to the train station. Then we'll try to carefully manipulate each segment so that it doesn't have this slightly choppy behavior. We might even have space for a sister road to this parking road, so let's grab the parallel tool of network tools. We'll see if I can get that sorted. Yeah, let's just do a regular road. And then we'll just go and grab the specific road we utilized for the other one, this guy here, and we'll just commit to an upgrade. Then the plan is to grab the 4 new nodes here and just adjust the height a little bit so that we can maybe squeeze this one into the other one. What I mean is squeeze this node into this existing pillar here so that the pillars just get a little closer, because there should be plenty of space for a car or 2 underneath. Let's just drop it a little further. Obviously, I don't think this segment is gonna work because we've got the on-ramp here, and the same can be said for this other side. So we're gonna potentially, let's just grab the nodes here and bring these in a little bit. We're also gonna make sure to get at least one direct connection from maybe this node to the pedestrian ring, something like this. That is absolutely perfect, although I'm gonna use better bulldozer to get rid of these pillars down here. But I don't think that's a big problem because we've got plenty of pillars in other places. And alternatively, we could just add maybe a node. Yeah, we'll add a node right there, which perfectly lines up, well, almost perfectly. Actually, that is pretty perfect. So that it is structurally sound. Yeah, sound is probably the word I'm looking for here. So to avoid making the connection points between this upper parking road and some of these other roads here too tight, I might want to connect to this intersection here, just utilizing a basic vanilla alley. I think this is going to allow me to use an elevation that isn't too extreme. So let's see, we're just gonna connect to this node. We're gonna bring it straight forward with an elevation of, if I get to 6.5, I should be able to cross the main arterial down below safely. Although this is telling me that I could probably do with at least one additional parking segment. Yeah, let's see if we can just squeeze that in. And ideally, I want to get a connection from this node to this node as well. Although it's going to be a little tricky because I need to ensure I have enough clearance above the lane underneath. But once again, the easiest solution is usually just to quickly get it connected and then use move it to just make sense of it all. Although that actually just kind of works. I guess we could drop this down a little bit. Alright, it's instantly seeing a bit of use as well, which I think is just a ton of fun. Probably not necessarily to visit the stadium, but just because parking is in a pretty high demand out here, given the amount of housing and job development. But I don't care about that. As long as it's being used, that is really nice. I just need the final connection now. And for this one, I'm gonna try something a little cheeky. Well, everything here is a bit cheeky, I guess, but can I... Oh, is that gonna work? I would love to just be able to connect to this node right here. I think I'm just gonna do the very same thing as I've talked about so many times by now. I'm just gonna get the connection in place, and use move it to save the day. That is actually pretty smooth on the first try. Not bad at all. I would say we have enough parking now. We can assume that these underground garages, I mean, they have 300 parking spots each. So that would be 600, that'd be 900. And then we've obviously got plenty of surface parking. We've got the actual multi-level parking building here, which can be upgraded. I should definitely do that. So that's 300 additional spaces. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, I know in real life this stadium can seat a lot of people. So maybe you'd want even more parking. But once again, it's not a suburban location and I don't have the actual match day mechanic to worry about. We've technically also got parking here, but I do imagine that is mainly reserved for the business park, at least on work days. But then match days probably aren't work days, at least if it's a civilized country where you don't have to sweat your weekends away at your corporate job. Yeah, that got a little political. Apologies. Anyways, let's get this connection in place as well. We can even squeeze in a bit of additional parking here by the business park. So I don't want to utilize the multi-story parking lot again. So I'm just gonna grab this nice looking one as well, get that nice and tight. I don't think I want to utilize the same node here. Yeah, that's gonna cause a graphical glitch. I think this is because it's a custom parking road I made with Road Builder, so that might be the issue. So I'm just going to connect and create a node right next to it, make sure I get rid of some of the crossings. Very nice. And as expected, the actual connection between the parking, the multi-story parking garage and the stadium is working just fine. So that's awesome. Alright, so the stadium district is obviously not finalized, but this would be a 2-3 hour episode if I was to add all the detailing and finalize the empty lots as well. So I think what we'll do instead is we're gonna be open to suggestions. We're gonna assume this is an area that is still undergoing rapid redevelopment. So any suggestions for what to actually build out here, I am very much open. So we're just gonna add some dirt, maybe a few grass bits and some stuff to some of the empty areas here that haven't seen any development. Oh, these wonderful grass sprites as well, just get that mixed in here. So if you're a developer, maybe a big time fancy investor with an idea for what to build on some of these empty lots, specifically this long and narrow segment and this slightly triangular shaped lot, please let me know in the comments. Oh, and obviously, if you know what the top tier football team of the Zeeburg metro area is called and what the stadium is called, please let me know, because I don't. My main suggestion would be a safe but also slightly boring option. That would be FC Zeeburg, so Football Club Zeeburg, which I do feel is a little fitting given the international vibe of the place, but it's obviously also a little boring. So yeah, hit me up. And while we might not be able to finalize this area, which is fine because it's going to expand across the train tracks eventually, I am going to wrap up the episode with just a bit of detailing. We all know the massive differences a few surfaces, some of the new terrain tools, and a ton of trees will do to an area. So that is definitely something I want to invest just a few minutes in. Well, a few minutes for you, an hour or so for me. Alright, so a bit of detailing later and things are shaping up. As you can probably tell, I did grab our signature teal color and added that not only to the station but also the stadium, and I think it looks pretty nice. If I just keep it white as the actual Allianz Arena, it's just a little too, I guess, in your face. It's just a big white blob basically. So I think this works out just a little better. I'm not fully sold on the actual pattern here on the side. You can change that and tweak that, but so far I do think it looks pretty nice. I did also add in a few additional structures here. I thought a high-rise on this lot would be pretty fitting. I did add a overpass pedestrian connection directly to the parking lot. I did add a few additional pedestrian connections to this parking lot as well. And then on this side of the train tracks, we've got a modern industrial workshop setup, but otherwise we've got more empty lots ripe for development. And a new interchange all of a sudden. I don't actually do a lot of highway interchanges here in Zeeburg, at least not recently, so it was pretty fun just getting this one set up. It's fairly simple, I would say, but I think it works and it kind of fits the surrounding environment as well. But other than that, I just kept it super simple. So there's no surface or decal play here. It's just a bunch of bushes and the lush terrain texture I've kind of added here. Obviously vanilla pavement paths as well, but I think it works. I mean, this is like an apartment complex that ideally you don't want to over detail because you'll need a ton of these if you're looking to achieve a sort of realistic scale when you do your city building. And then for an area like this apartment complex, I did actually add a few surfaces and a few props just to kind of detail it a little more. I think this is more of a focal point. I don't expect us to have 50 identical developments to this one. So I'm just trying to like evaluate, okay, how much of a focal point, how special is an area, and then how much detail is that gonna need to really shine and stand out. And yeah, I mean, that's it. That's a wrap. This was a really fun, very, very technical episode to map out. I did a ton of trial and error before hitting record, but in some cases I also just had like a spontaneous idea, such as this elevated parking, and I think it just worked out. Now, it may have worked out even better if I'd spent more time designing it, coming up with additional custom roads, but there's a lot of fun in just trying things out and just making work with what you got. Oh, and there's a clock tower here as well, which is super rare. Please don't drive here. Man, that is cheeky. I know they can technically drive here on the pedestrian path, but that's a no-no. Anyways, thank you as always for watching and all the wonderful feedback. I'm looking forward to the suggestions on this one as well. I hope to see you all in the next one, and I hope you're enjoying your summer or maybe your winter if you're in the southern hemisphere. Either way, have a really nice day. Goodbye.